Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode. I am Michael Petrow, and joining me on the show is writer-director Cameron Patterson. We sit down, talk about his adventures in the film and how he found himself on a film set, screenwriting and pitching studios and all the bigwigs to pay for your idea. Writer's block, how do you get over that? Does he develop a character before the story or the story before the characters? And then drumming. He's a professional drummer on the side as well, too. So we get to talk about his time with Modern Drummer and doing a video series with them on drum kits, drum techs, sound checks, all that jazz. There's some famous musicians that he drops at the end of this episode, kids, so tune in for that. Besides that, that's all I got. That's Cam for the day. No news is good news, as I keep saying for the last couple of weeks. No live dates, nothing fun happening outside of the show right now. We'll update you when we can. And yeah, that's about it. To you OGs, to you original debaters, head on into the theater, the movie theater, the proverbial made-up movie theater. Get your snacks, get your booze, get your weed, get everything that makes this a little bit more enjoyable. But to you new people, stick around for just another 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Let's see if I can do this in a fast enough timeline for you. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to us at the end of the show. That's all we're asking, right? Hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to. We'll be back the following week. If you're so inclined and you want to buy some merch, or you're like, hey, these guys could use a couple bucks, I'd love to donate somehow, there's a donation tab in a prop shop. All right, all the usual podcast merchandise, plus stuff you've probably never seen. We have skateboards, socks, shoes, tote bags, laundry bags, and then your usual stuff, right? Your hats, your hoodies, your sweaters, your t-shirts, and all that. And then there's a donation tab. There's a 3-tiered system there. $1 gets you this, $3 gets you that. $5 is the max, and it'll get you something that you can use to embarrass your friends with. If you decide to throw some bucks at us, we'll bring you into the world of the show. Feel free. Just hit that donation tab. It says buy me a coffee. That's the donation tab. Don't really buy us a coffee, whatever you want. Point is that this is what you do if you're inclined. If not, no harm, no foul. We understand. No big deal. We all have day jobs. We're not breaking our backs trying to do this. But by doing so, you get to be like a co-executive producer and all that charming bullshit. Then we get to blame you for doing better, and it's a win-win for everybody. So, yeah, that's it. Now, as a new person, you don't know we do this, but we like to mention the top 10 places that listen to the show each week. So, number 10, Seattle, Washington. Thank you for showing up. We haven't seen you before. Allentown, Pennsylvania. Again, love seeing you on the list. Number 8, Langcut, Subcarpathian. I don't know who's there. I'm saying hello to you. I also don't know where Subcarpathian is. Edmonton, Alberta. Baconia, Manitoba. Morden, Manitoba. Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. You're a newbie. Hello, Dartmouth. Concord, North Carolina. Thanks for coming back each week. Vancouver, British Columbia. I don't know if our guy Martin is paying you guys to listen to the show, but either way, thank you for listening. And to our loyal fans, our home base, Winnipeg, Manitoba, coming in at number 1. Everybody who listens here, we love it. Thank you guys, no matter what. Even if you don't show up on this list, we still love it, okay? But these are just the people that are like, go listen to these assholes. They're saying funny shit. Or go listen to these idiots. They're worth laughing at because they don't know what they're doing. Whatever the reason is, thank you so much for spreading the word and lifting us up, getting us out there, getting the word of the debaters out to the masses. I have nothing else for you. I will give you this lovely conversation I had with Cam. I will cue the reel, and you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everybody, to the official space section of the chart.
Want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Sir, you're out of order. Out of order? I show you out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Reel Debaters production. It's just me. There's no Mark. There's no Jimmy. There's no Martin. There is a very special guest, though. I managed to convince one of Steve's friends, Cameron Patterson, writer, director, editor, drummer. I always want to make these introductions the best. Is here to talk to us about the writing process, specifically working in Manitoba film and how he got into film. Hello, Cam.
Hello, how are you doing, Mike?
Good today, actually. It was nice to have a temperature break and to see some rain for the last 2 days.
It was, especially with the forest fire thing going on.
Right? Yeah. No, it's. I have a buddy at work who, during the ugly day job, he came running into work and he was like, I need 6 pumps because they evacuated his cabin, and he was like, I got to go set up a ring of water around everything, and I'm like, oh my god,
No.
so glad I only own one house.
Yeah, we're up in Gimli. Like I have a boat up there, and the smoke some days on the water was so thick. It was pretty
Oh,
bad.
you're like playing in the Inner Lake?
Yeah. Yeah. I fell in love with Lake Winnipeg when I did a documentary on it. But I have friends up there too who were telling me for years, get a boat you can relax on. Because I grew up with a ski boat, and my kids all grew up in skiing and stuff. And that's activity driven stuff. And then you get older and you realize after a pandemic, I think I just want to chill out a little more. So I got lazy and I bought an old person's boat. It's awesome.
No, those are great. You want to cruise, right? It's about relaxing. I did the tube run a couple weeks ago up in Pinawa, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, I love going low and slow, right? With a cooler of beer behind you and
Yeah.
spiders jumping into your paddle boat, whatever the hell it's called. Anyways, I'm
Yeah.
rambling. We've got you here to talk about so many things, and I don't want to talk about my summer weekends much longer. So,
Okay.
I really want to sink my teeth into. First of all, like we always do here, we like to know the origin story. That's the joke, right?
Yeah.
So what's your Wolverine origin story for film? How did you find yourself dipping your toe into the world of cinema?
Sometimes I think I came into this really, really late. If I wasn't smart enough to get into this when I was in my 20s. I was chasing a different career in music, and then had kids, and then got into IT for years. But I was always writing, like as a hobby. I was always writing on the side and doing things, and always loved movies. I mean, I was always huge movie fan, big fan. But I never had an idea of how anyone did that or anything. And on my 40th birthday, 42nd, 43rd birthday, life changed, things as they do. And so I started to, try and expand things out. I'd already written a novel, which we'll talk about. It's the longest time between novel and publication in the history of mankind. But, I had written a novel and was well into a second one. And then, I started getting into being interested in screenwriting. And I'm not even really sure what really triggered that, to be honest. But I started getting into it, and I thought, well, I got a novel. Why don't I just adapt that? And I adapted the novel. And this would have been, holy crap, I don't even know how long ago that was. But by the time I was 45 or 46. And so I drafted out a screenplay, which probably was pretty brutal, pretty bad. Because I didn't really understand, why a script format works, and the job behind it, and the people that need to work from it, and all that stuff. Right? I was just some guy who thought, this is it. I'm going to get rich and move to LA, I guess, or something. But no, I had kids. I wasn't moving anywhere. But anyway, so I did, and I naively pitched it out. I found, I think, about 10 or 12 screenwriting agents, and I pitched it out. And when I look back at that, I think, what was I thinking? And because I sent it out, and I had no producing experience, no film experience at all, and never mind writing experience for this kind of format. And of course, they all said, well, when you get some experience, call us back. It's interesting, but And this one agent called me back. She said, I really like this story. How did you come up with this? And I didn't mention the book. I just said, oh, I just played with this adoption idea and da 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 da. And she said, I really like it, and I like the dialogue. And she's still my agent today.
Nice.
Yeah, that's Doreen
Batting
Holmes.
1,000.
Now she's and I think that's kind of where it really started. And I was not, quote, in the industry like locally for a long time. I started working with her, and what was going on was the boom was really huge in Vancouver, and she was getting me work like to fix scripts and stuff. I think largely because I think they just wanted to go with a cheaper route and fix 5 or 6 pages or do this, and I'd get notes to change this to this and this, and it was a great. I mean, you couldn't pay for that kind of learning curve, right?
Okay.
I saw a lot of scripts that were, you started to get a handle on this is a bad script, or the director had notes and they just wanted things changed. Producers had to change characters. There was a ton of things, but it kept pretty busy. And then it graduated to, I ended up writing some horror scripts for guys in the States. Never got credited.
Who earns?
but I got paid. And at the time, I mean, to be honest, after doing that for several years, like on the side, I'd get up at 5 a.m. before I had to go do IT for a day and get my kids up and going to school. And I'd get up at 5 so I could have like 2 solid hours before the house woke up. And that was kind of my writing time. And I realized then too that I'm pretty much a morning writer, because I'll spend the rest of the day kind of honing out what's going to come next. But that process of just getting the job done, that kind of stuck with me from that. Like, I'm still a morning writing guy. I'll set aside my mornings and I'll write from. Right now, I've got a screenplay that I have the deadline by August 30th. So I'm from 6 a.m, give or take 11 till noon. And then I shut it down, because I know I've tried to do it before where I push beyond that. And a lot of times you end up rewriting it all. But, it's in your head all the time. Matter of fact, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, yes. Anyway, working for her, doing that was great. And then it graduated to some horror scripts. And then it graduated to, because I was a musician, I had some friends that asked to do music videos, and I got a little interested in that. And I always was fascinated by directing. I just never really dove into, what it really entailed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I took a course at Film Group, and the guy, one of the guys who came in and taught that workshop, came in and did the camera part of it, and that was Ryan Herdman, and I still work with him today. and this whole team, there was people in there. Bree Tate, now she's been in makeup ever since, and there was several others. And I had a screenplay, it was a little short film, and the guys that taught the course said, "We'll come shoot that with you." And that's kind of how I got bit. And I remember shooting this first short with an actress named Tony Reimer and Terry Treviak, and just watching them. And that's what hooked me, was when I did a scene and worked it out, got my head around, they say blocking. I'm like, I mean, it was so, God, I had no clue. But watching that performance, what they did with these words and that thing, and it still hooks me, honest to God. I haven't done it in a while now, since I did the true crime series, so you do miss it after a while. But watching the monitor and just seeing that actor slide in, you can actually physically see them slide in between the DOP saying set or frame, and you let them go, and you just see it slide in, and something happens. And I can't even explain it. I'm not an actor, but it's just jaw dropping. So that's what hooked me. After that, I'm done. I'm stuck on this. I did a bunch of music videos and figured out how to get better at it, and just went from there. Did a few short films.
Is there anything that you can, because I love somebody who spits in the face of, like, you got to go to school, you gotta take time out and learn a thing.
Well,
yeah, I mean, not saying you shouldn't, and not saying I'm just saying there's a couple ways to skin a cat. So do you think you've got?
There is.
Oh, what was it? Because it sounds like a duck to water, man. I've seen your stuff, I've read your stuff. Like it just, is there something there, or are you just a savant?
No, God, I'm no savant. I'm way not smart enough to be that. It's interesting, is because it just felt like I understood it. It made sense to me, and I don't know on what level. To be honest, I'm not sure. I just visually, I'd always been visual. I'd always drawn. Besides writing and film scribblers, I was always drawing as well. And so, I mean, I knew how to transfer story to visual. And I've even been, the book, along the way, I've been told that the writing, it's somewhat visual. I just don't know. It just made sense. I understood it. Like, once I understood the technical aspect of what to do here, and really got educated on, camera lenses and cinema and blah, 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 blah. But it just made sense, and it didn't scare me. I was a drummer, professional for years, like making my living on it. And to this day, I still have stage fright issues, and I knew, the big gigs and stuff, and it's like, sweaty hands and the whole thing, and that nervousness. And the odd thing is that I felt I was, trained enough and worked on technique and my time and things like that. I could read fairly decently, and so I shouldn't have this fear of it. Like I should have, like it was this sort of real sort of, and so I guess that's why at a certain point in that career I had to bow out, because I just sensed that there's a level that I'm just never going to get to. I just knew in myself, and besides that, I had kids, and nothing was my first priority beyond that. Like that was my first priority, so everything else had to come after. But there was just something there, and it's funny, I never have that feeling when it comes to story. And on a set, directing or writing the screen or anything, it changes a little bit, but for me, I'm just very, very story driven, and so I kind of approach it that way. It just made sense. I rambled, but I think I got
No, you didn't ramble. You enhanced.
Okay.
I get it. I don't get it in the same way that you're saying, but I think I'm picking, like, it just feels like a warm bath. It makes sense. The emotions are there. So
yeah, I mean, it really did feel like I should have been, there's a lot of young guys in this industry that I've been lucky enough to be around and work with, and they were very, and they always strike me as very tuned in. They knew early, they dialed it in, they got into the industry, they worked their way into it on a different level and a different path. And I thought, wow, that's just smart, because I came into it very, very late. So
I find it interesting that being the guy who keeps the time, who's in charge of all of the time on stage when a band is playing,
okay,
and essentially directing or writing something and producing something, you're also keeping time on set. And I just think the making, the movie, the book, whatever you're putting out there, that's more, from my perspective, that's more embarrassing. You're more naked doing that than you're sitting back behind the drum set. So I find it interesting that the drumming was scared you, but not bearing your soul, because Charlie Watts just sits there and keeps time, right? Like, but he's an amazing drummer, but he's not putting himself out there like Jagger. And you say that putting yourself out there on the big screen for everybody to see and judge you just feels right. I think that's neat.
Yeah, and maybe I should take therapy, because I cannot for the life of me even explain it. And I love it. I still do gigs, not as many, but and I still, I'm still out of whack if I don't sit down behind a drum kit after a little while. I just don't know. It's just and I don't get usually nervous talking in front of people. I can stand up and talk in a mic, and just I don't know, maybe it just meant too much. I don't know. Or maybe I just admired too many amazing guys, that I ended up getting to meet later on, but and doing stuff with. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know,
What did you start writing to start writing? Like, your first screenplay wasn't the first thing you started writing. Were you writing poetry? Were you writing journals? Like, what were you straight creating off the hop? Because as a kid, every kid's like, journal your thoughts, right? And then that usually kind of is your birthplace, your fucking grade 6 guidance counselor, and then you're like, well, let's create instead, because I don't like my life. So what were the things that you wrote before you started writing?
Straight up, it was always thriller stuff.
Yeah.
Straight, like, scribblers of thriller stuff, and I loved action movies, monster movies, and it really came from that for me. And that's still the thing that I like writing most. And yet I've written screenplays that are very woman centric. I got a television show that looks like it's going to go into some development here in Toronto, and that's a complete 1912 woman's story. I don't know how involved I'll be once they get the pilot written, and they're going to fill that writing room. If it gets that far, I'm talking a bit cart for the horse, but if it gets that far, I'm smart enough and hopefully old enough to understand that you should get a whole team of women in there and get women directors, and it'd be awesome. And I'm going to love watching that.
Yeah, no. So you raise a good point there, and where do you start with a story? How do you get to this end game of it ending up in a room full of other writers and then watching it? Like, where do you draw your inspiration from when you start writing something?
Okay, for me, sure. What the heck? I'll talk about this. I'm not going to talk about who that's with right now or anything.
Sure. Yeah.
But
No, don't.
but yeah, but the story itself kind of, I started research. I'm always been a bit of a history buff guy, especially Winnipeg history, because I think I'm sort of in that school of, sometimes I think we sell our own histories short, that we don't think they'll appeal on a bigger scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's typically maybe even kind of a Canadian thing, but definitely a Winnipeg thing, at least for that. Yeah.
You're like, someone's like, way to go, man. And you're like, nah, I could have done better. Right. And it's like, well, take it and run with it, you idiot.
Yeah. And so I stumbled into the Winnipeg General Strike. I remember I was really young, and I researched that. And I wrote what I thought was at the time, because they did miniseries back in the day, because yes, I'm that old now.
Hey, they still
yeah, they call them something different now.
Yeah.
But
limited series, not mini.
Limited series. And I wrote this thing which was designed to be that. I did this whole treatment outline and stuff, and I had my agent at the time, and because I really just got interested in that time period, like really interested in it. And then I even did a documentary for MTS. Like I finally got an MTS doc, which I was really excited about. I wanted to do the history of cabs in Winnipeg. It was hard to find the information, but it was still something that took me back to that time period.
Yeah.
And then as I was doing that, I learned about Point Douglas and what was happening there in this red light segregation experiment thing. It was really fascinating. And what struck me is that, as much as this is, their trade is what it was, but you think about women like that in 1912, like they were literally in charge of their own destinies, and they were absolutely getting powerful, like powerful enough that they scared the establishment, and the establishment was forced to shut them down because they were really running this like a business. And I thought that was really fascinating. If I, microcosmed it and then put in the suffragette movement, because then that makes them, that they're like a rogue suffragette thing and they're hiding within this brothel experience.
Yeah. I
thought this is really great. And it also is almost timely, because these were women fighting for, what other ways were back then where they could be in charge of their own livelihoods, and if they weren't married or whatever, we've sort of come along, right? I don't know, I raised a daughter, she's highly independent. I'm not saying I knew what I was doing, but portraying women that way is kind of something I think I gravitate to, because it kind of matters. I don't want my daughter to read or see something that I've written and now I've got granddaughters, so I certainly don't want them to ever see something they're going, Papa.
Yeah. What's the adage, right? Like, leave it better than you found it.
Yeah. So I graduated into that and stuff, but I always come back to the thriller stuff. I really do like playing with an audience that way.
So are we, do you sick bastard? Like
sometimes.
Who inspires you when it comes to thrillers? Like who do you smile over?
You want to talk about screenwriters or novelists? He does some thrillers, but stuff that David Fincher directs. David Mamet's great. All these guys that wrote. I like Aaron Sorkin's writing because I love the dialogue he comes up with. There's a true cadence there. There's a true rhythm there.
I agree with that. Aaron Sorkin did this one thing, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. It was a clip of a show. It got like 24 episodes. And it was as if you got to go behind the scenes of Saturday Night Live. It was a fictional late night television show that used all of the drama from a perceived perspective of what Saturday Night Live must be. And it had a cast, and it had producers, and it had all the problems of what you can and can't write for sketch comedy. And right around the Bush administration, and it is so whip snap smart. And it was only one season, but if you watch it, it actually, I don't know, maybe you can inform this, but sometimes it almost feels like if one season was made, they could have ended it. Like, is it left open-ended so you give yourself an out? Because this show feels like they're like, no, this was perfect. You could go further, but it's perfect as it is.
Yeah.
Is that
Interesting.
a trick for writing where you kind of like you don't bookend it so much? Because I've noticed that in the television that I'm watching where I just look at it in and of itself instead of this series we're going to get sometimes. And I'm like, that's a perfect season of television. Stop right there.
Yeah. I've had, yeah, I've had to do that on this thing. You know, I handed in I wrote a pilot for it. And then as we reconfigured it, you know, between my manager and myself, we realized that the pilot that I thought I'd written is really better as the season ender. And so then I had to, so I had to do something that opens a different, you know, part of the story up at the end of that. And then they brought in a couple showrunners in Toronto. So, you know, I'll be working with them on some pilot, maybe September, October. I'm hoping. I mean, we're, you know, it's sounding pretty good, but I'd really be excited to see it go. It'd be kind of neat.
I am too now, because I'm a big proponent for give me all the stories from all the people of all the colors of all the worlds. Like, it is the most ignorant thing to be like, you can tell stories and you can't. Like, go fuck yourself if you think that, because just there's so many things that when they fall out of the tree and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and you trip across a show or a movie or a book, and it just changes you, and you don't get that unless you're telling stories that are outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I've I've had some thrillers. I thought, oy, going too far, Cam, going too far.
The world's not ready for me yet.
Yeah, it's funny, and you know, it goes in waves, right? Like, you know, these things get pitched out. I wrote one for an LA group in 2019 or something, I guess before the pandemic. I think they shot it in Vancouver just during the opening. And you know, I mean, they, you know, they give you the idea. I pitched them, and then they gave me what they'd like to see it be. And okay, so then I started tuning it up that way, and it was getting pretty. You know, I kept reminding myself, just do it, you know, deliver it, get it through. And it wasn't too bad. I'm sure it went through some rewrites before it got to a camera, because that's what they tend to do at that level, which I'm fine with. I mean, I've done that so many times with some horror guys in the States that, you know, they just didn't care even what the title was.
So I know enough, but I'm always about like, hey, let's educate the general public here, because the magic you guys make is important to getting away from the bullshit of the real world. That's the whole here at the show, right? Is we take fake characters and argue them in a real world, and take real characters like us and put us into the movie and act like assholes. Like, that's our running tagline.
Yeah,
it becomes a lot of fun if you get a bunch of cinephiles in the room. But I know enough from talking and playing in the game and being a Uber fan. I've got enough of an idea of the stages a screenplay goes through, but I want to know where my ignorant ass is wrong. So what's start to finish process like? Like, you've got your idea, right? Then what are the stages? How do you approach the executive? Like, where's the pitch happen? All that stuff, all the business, I guess, is what I'm more curious about.
Yeah. So you mean like from pitching an idea?
Yeah. Like, how do you
pitching a script?
Yeah. What's like, you get it done, right? We'll get to the writing stuff in a second, but you get it done. And then how do you sell it? What's the next step?
You know, it's interesting. I've had, you know, I've had some writing stuff for people, but then the stuff I've done on spec is still trying to get going in a lot of ways. And I've had a lot of tire kicking in the last 3 years, which is awesome and then frustrating at the same time.
Sure.
But I noticed the difference in having pitch meetings here. And then when I got signed to a manager in Montreal, I was in LA quite a bit before the pandemic, and it was just meetup after meetup after meetup. And there was 2 screenplays that I'd already written that I was pushing with her. and really wanting them to move. And and one was a really great piece that I still, want to do so bad. And it was, when I told my agent I want to write this thing, and it just came as an idea, and it came from the idea of a solitary person, and it was just a writing challenge, right? Because sometimes the agents will say, can you give me a spec on this, this TV show and stuff, because they want to try and keep you into a current thing. And I sort of never really wanted to do that, to be honest. I was doing okay without, I wasn't moving to Vancouver. I wasn't moving to places where writer rooms get filled up. That really wasn't what I wanted to do so much. But anyway, so I had this idea, and she kind of said, well, I guess if you want to write that, you can write what you want to write. She just says, I don't know how we ever get that to somebody, this idea. And it was interesting writing. It was a real challenge. Single guy, 1873, sod house. But what happens to this guy? I know. It sounds like, what were you drinking and why did you start writing that?
I mean, I'm imagining a darker Dances with Wolves already. That's about where my mind went.
Well, it gets dark. It gets violent, and
trail?
but it starts, and I really liked it. I really liked it, and then, but they weren't convinced at all. And then I gave them the draft. And they both came back and said, I think this is the strongest thing you've ever written. And okay, can we sell it? Can we find somebody to produce this? Because I'd love to direct this. And I started sort of storyboarding, and I started doing all that. At the time, I was working pretty steadily for Frantic, doing the true crime shows. This is all at the same time.
Yep.
And so they all hate the name. I'm not even going to tell you the name, but the title. No, I stood in front of a person at CBC, and she actually frowned and went, "That's your title?" Okay, this pitch meeting's over. Yeah, it's called Sod. It's called Sod Man. Ask Steve about it. He's read it. And
hey man, there's a movie out there called Pig right now, and everybody loves it. So don't
despair. Don't despair. Matter of fact, that I got the most meetings in LA. And it got so close, and they just wanted to change a few aspects of it. And yeah, I thought for sure it was going. And at that point, I was even like, I'm even okay if you bring in a bigger name director. That's all good, man. Like, I'll ride that wave, no problem. But yeah, and then at the 11th hour, it kind of stopped. And a couple months later, we're into a pandemic. And the other one was a love letter to drumming screenplay I wrote. I was doing work for a while with Kathy Rich on Buddy Rich, kind of developing his life story kind of story.
Okay.
And that went on for a little while.
And then, like, just in case you've lived under a rock, like, the best drummer?
Yeah, well, he still is. It's pretty fanatical following, but Buddy Rich is still the big guy. Yeah.
Like I've seen all the drum movies, because that's as close as I'll ever get to a drum set, and I know probably Guitar Hero, I think, and I mean that's insulting just to say that, so but you know what I mean, right? Like I'm a brass section, but like every movie is I can't wait to ask you about drumming movies. Every movie or every movie that ever talks about drumming, it's Buddy.
Yeah. Because he was so visible, and he was ungodly, uniquely talented. There's the biggest drummers on the planet today that still say they can't do it. Like his abilities. But yeah, so it led me to this idea of doing this drumming story, and I really liked it. It was a very family-friendly movie, and now we've got it to an actor. I have a producer that's interested in doing it, has read it and liked it, and this actor I really wanted to get who is a drummer. And
Two birds.
LA. Yeah, I can't say the name. I'm not gonna do that to myself, but but my manager, I was begging them, please do it. And like, I'll go and fly myself there, get me 10 seconds with this guy, because he's a drummer. And if I need to, I have friends in the drumming industry that can help me do that. But so anyway, those are the two scripts I really want to see done. Those are the things, and the rest of them I can let go. Yeah, I wrote a World War II thing on a woman spy and turned that into a series, and I've had a lot of interest on that. And just so I've had a lot of this near stuff, but like real interest while I was kind of working on other people's stuff at the same time. So,
which is
but
great.
it got me fast.
I would imagine in the gig world, it's like, okay, if I'll do this right now, and then I'll work on my thing, and I'll do this right now, and then I'll work on my thing, like that. That which is probably why it takes so long for you guys to accomplish something, because you're doing something all the time.
Yeah. Well, those stories, it depends on what they are. I mean, the process does change for me. I can't, I don't know whose process is right or wrong. I think however you get the job done, you get it done. But depending on what is needed for the story. I mean, a thriller, honestly, it's stuff you're trying not, I don't want to have to research it. I don't want to have to do things like that. Come up with a premise, come up with an idea, come up with a good goal, a good obstacle, a good crime, and get out of the way of the rest of it, and don't overdevelop the character, because quite frankly, that just sometimes gets in the way of your plot, because you kind of squeeze so much character development in there. But, and I just try and get into this rhythm with it. And I'm to the point now where I can sort of lay out a beat sheet once I have the concept, in a day. And then I'll just sort of, we talk about cards. I used to outline the entire thing front to back. And now I tend to not want to do that. I actually tend to go make 3-4 cards ahead at a time as I'm writing, and then I get ideas. It kind of goes, because I do know sort of, I've kind of developed a pretty good gauge, I think, of how to still keep it on the rails, and make sure that the through line's there, and make sure that I'm not screwing the thematic elements that are pretty clear, and just keeping the story tuned in. But and I love that process. I really do. I've learned how to really embrace the whole process, because I really do love that part of the writing.
It sounds like
yeah.
And it's all part of it. So if you're gonna learn it, you gotta. It's a dance, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's the things you need to really get a handle on, right? I mean, mostly you're writing in 3-act structure. At least for me, and basic things. Know what the difference between story and plot. It's very different, and I think I've just gotten better. I mean, I do love writing the dialogue part of it. I mean, because I don't know, I just love it when characters start interacting, and that's the stuff I seem to be fixing when I was doing all these other scripts way back in the time, is that the dialogue just seemed really stated, or it was it had so much exposition in it, and people don't talk like that, and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, right? We don't backstory our whole life and our relationship inside of 2 paragraphs of dialogue, just because we think the audience needs to get caught up.
That's
right?
how I used to date, man. No wonder it never went well.
Yeah.
Like, do you come up with a character and then write a story about them more than you have a story, and then you start creating the characters around it? Like, which?
Yeah, for me, it's more the story first.
Okay.
At least in a screenplay, it's always been sort of the idea first, and then I find the characters that serve that idea. And like, I'll find a main character that serves the idea, and then, to be honest, once I have a main character and maybe a strong second one, then you're really putting secondary characters around them. I used to do that. I used to do pages. I used to draw the characters on the wall, so I could just look at them at a glance, and kind of remember what I thought that character would sound like, or have their voice in my head.
Oh, neat.
And now I rarely even do that. They just, because they do tend to live in you. I mean, once you get in the role of it, because that's all based on the fear of, you're going to forget things. You're going to, right? It's kind of the idea, because it's overwhelming, 120 some pages or whatever, even in a novel. And I better have it all written out, because I'm going to forget it all. And then you really realize, once you really get into it and you're soaked in, that's not really what happens. They do live in you. It does exist. And I've creeped out my kids a couple of times. They come to my room on a Sunday morning. It's like, Dad, what are you talking? Huh? and you're acting it out. You're in it, and that's when the best writing happens. I honestly think the stuff that I reread, that I've done is I knew that I was right in it. I was emotional scenes. I'm sitting at the typewriter. I'm spilling it out. I'm crying sometimes. I know men should admit that, but the hell with it.
No,
I'm just saying, you get to that point. I think something imbues in the writing, in the dialogue, something imbues that is going to resonate. If it's too stated and too stoic, something's not going to resonate. It's not going to imbue. It's just like music. It's you could get a drum machine and it's perfect and it's laid out.
Yeah.
But there's reasons why in the studio they'll call you in to just bring hi-hats, right?
Sure.
And I've done it. I've showed up with just hi-hats, and they just need that feel that moves and gives it breathing, movement, and because that's what's going to imbue, right? That's what's going to imbue, the groove, and it's going to come alive. So I really feel that way. In a novel, big time, because you're way more immersed in a novel to some degree.
Did this novel come through as well as finding a manager? Your first pass done. Like how many iterations are there? Like for every 16-year-old who hopefully doesn't listen to this because we're rated E, but like for anybody out there who would want to start writing, how Stephen King says, like, you 4, 5, 6, 7 attempts at the whole thing. Is that like, are you finding do you
Absolutely.
it up a lot? Yeah.
Absolutely. I even, with screenwriting, I mean, what constitutes a first draft for me is usually about 6 or 7 drafts. And I don't, I got in the habit too of, you'd get notes or something, you're changing stuff. And I think everyone does it, you just sort of take the existing file and you start rewriting over top of it and changing this and that. I stopped doing that. I just got a little stand over here on the side by my laptop, and all the noted pages on the existing script, print them off, put it there, and I start scratch, and I type along, and I redo the whole thing. And as I'm doing that, different things happen, and the notes get incorporated, but other things are worked in, and it just becomes a fresher thing. And I did the same. And the novel, because I wrote it so long ago, and then I kept working, over the years, and then it just sort of sat in my laptop for a lot of years. And then my agent realized we were talking, and that the Need to Know script actually came from a book. And I was like, what? And then, I started pulling the book out a few years ago. But the original manuscript was 487 pages. No wonder I couldn't get a publisher to look at an unpublished writer who's throwing a Canadian thriller at him with a corrupt prime minister, blah, 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 blah. Like thinking, what planet are you on, man? Because it was like stupid long, And so I went through it and I got it down to like 280 some pages. And then when it got cleaned up, it even came down a couple more pages. And then the rest of it went into a folder, and that'll be in book 2 of that series.
Oh yeah, because you take everything and use it accordingly, right?
But easily there was 6 or 7 full passes completely. Yeah. Because there was a lot of, it's dense, it is a dense novel. There's a lot of, there's a lot going on.
What's the Cole's notes of this? Like, I've got it in front of me here, but what's the
Cole's notes,
so to speak?
It is an adoption search gone wrong. Oddly enough, I just wanted to do a Canadian thriller. I even got pushed at one point to Americanize it, make Winnipeg, Minneapolis, make Vancouver, Seattle, make Ottawa, Washington, get rid of CSIS and CSE and RCMP, make it FBI, NSA, and CIA, and do that thing. And I actually got about 100 pages in, and I had to stop. I just don't want to do this. It's not why I wanted to write this. And I'm going to get really passionate on you now.
Yes.
Because I'm really passionate about this. It's not why I wanted to do it. I really wanted to I did a lot of research on the RCMP back in the day, on CSIS and all that stuff. And because I'm a James Bond guy, and I just love smart intelligence stories,
Here we go. Yeah.
Kind of the espionage stuff is
You're
really
talking my language now.
my thing. Yes. and I love reading those books, Frederick Forsyth and all that, and those are the books that really got me going. But the thing is that when I started this story, it's this espionage story, but it's probably my most personal story, because the adoption part of it is sort of based on my experience of an adoption search, right? And I was fortunate enough, I did meet my birth mother, and it wasn't, and my mom and dad were great. I mean, I have, they've all passed on, but
it's the better version of that story.
Yeah, and it wasn't a thing about finding my parent. It was there was reasons why I wanted to meet her at the time, and and I had I put a thing into CFS, and I got a response back, like a match, right? It has to match.
Yep.
And it came back in like within a week, and I was jaw dropped. So here I am at my age at the time, and never really gave this a lot of forethought, and or that this person had been carrying this for all these years to this degree.
Yeah.
And so she was very, very young when she had me, and I was sitting on the back porch. This always gets to me. I was sitting on the back porch at my dad's house. He was still alive, and I let him read the letter, and he handed it back to me and said, "I think a 16-year-old girl deserves to know you're okay."
Oh, wow.
And I lost my dad 4 months later. And I was already kind of researching the idea. I'd already met my birth mother and that experience. And I saw what happened, when I told her that she made the right choice for me, and she just nearly dropped in my arms. And all of that emotion packed into who the character Michael Spencer became, because Michael Spencer was my birth name before I was adopted.
Oh.
And I thought, damn, I would have had so many more girls in high school if I was Michael Spencer, not Cam Patterson with the crooked nose, And anyway, I thought, what a cool name.
I'm a Michael, and it didn't bode well, so you're not missing too much.
Okay. But and then the rest of the story just played out. But because my dad had passed, I realized that I had brought the birth father into the story sooner than it was originally planned. And he kind of led the journey in this whole idea of coming back to save the life of the son he never met. So, and my dad's in a number of these characters. There's traits in these characters that are definitely my dad. And I realized at the end of writing that first manuscript for 2.5 years the last chapter in this book is for my dad. And I realized I kept him with me for 3 years. So it was really a personal story. And I've had several friends that knew my dad, and basically they've all called it. They said, "Dude, that last chapter is for your dad." I said, "Yeah."
I want to read it. I want to read it. I bought a fucking tablet for a reason, so I want to read it. And I think that's so great. Like I love how the sausage is made. I've been, like, you talk about father stuff and father issues and all that. Like we joke on the show all the time that the reason I have such a wide variety of movies is because my dad was like, "Here you go, better than a parent." And I go from Dr. Zhivago to Beetlejuice and everything in between, and I love it all. And it's because I had this trove of fucking, this is where I get all sad, mopey, dopey, but like I'm just like, I had all these characters to entertain me, and the one I wanted wasn't there. But I like when stuff like that is buried inside and finding out why. Like it just creates I like knowing the creative story. Like that's why I like knowing about screenwriters so much, because is that what we're watching in some way, shape, or form is coming from you as a person. So when you read your thing or watch your thing or listen to your thing, then it doesn't show you who you are, but it gives me an insight to how, and there's a human level to it, right? And I think that's great.
And it takes us back to be honest, it also why I wanted to keep it centered in Winnipeg, even though it travels around, right? It's Toronto, it's Vancouver, San Diego, Bahamas. It's all over the place. But the main character is here, and then I wanted it to be RCMP and CSIS, and I wanted to show that CSE is it's a big organization, but it's still fictionalized. But it just mattered to me that it was still, it's not hard to make all this look sexy. It's not hard to make Winnipeg look sexy at all. And I just wanted to, I put a car chase in there. So as much as it is a true espionage book, and the pace gets pretty crazy, pretty much half the book is just, it's a race, and to save them lives and find this information they need, and before these bad guys kill their families, and and why that was happening. But to put you in the Prime Minister's residence, and to put you in the PMO, and to put you into this thing of Ottawa. And my birth mother was a great resource, because she was working within that political role. She knew all that stuff. So it was really helpful and cool. Yeah. So it was kind of neat. It was a lot of fun to write.
How long did you write it for in totality?
Sorry?
How long did you write it for in totality, start to finish?
Yeah, the first draft was 2.5 years, but when I did it this time, I got through the draft in about 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah, because I still have, the whole story was sort of there, right?
Yeah.
And I was just picking parts. The thing my manager wanted me to do was, because they're looking at how we could present this to, producers, how this IP could be turned into something. And I said, well, I really, I actually worked out like 6 or 7 more books based on Michael Spencer, graduating as we go. So she took those things. But the second novel is a complete psychological thriller that's off the charts, screwed up and sick. And I don't know what was going on in my life, man. It was first person craziness. And then I've had a few people read it, and they said, you need to finish this. This is like crazy. Good.
Can't leave us hanging, man.
Yeah, it was called Obvious. And hopefully I can get it out. I think I might even actually put it into smaller books, so I can do 1, 2, and 3. And then I'll have the 4th one done by the end of the year.
Yeah. No. And then option it for a book to yourself, because you can.
Yeah. Or, or let someone option it. I'm okay having retirement. That's good.
Yeah. Right. Residuals.
Yeah.
TV series. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So when do you know it's ready? Like I can sit and do a thing and beat a thing to death and get lost in it. Do you get lost in your characters and not able to be objectively? Like because this is a thing where, like, yes, you've got a manager, you're working with someone. I imagine you're getting notes, you're being, you got a Sherpa, so to speak. And
they both came in. Yeah.
So do you have your own perspective? Do you know when it's ready, or when?
Yes.
Okay.
You do.
Right, you do.
You actually do. You get through it, and I know with the screenwriting, like going through a script, it's just question mark. I don't even make notes for myself anymore. I just, as I'm reading, just question mark. And and who knows what that question mark means, but I'll remember it when I come back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This dialogue sucks. Do I need this scene? I'm not sure this works anymore. It worked when I was writing it, but now that I've got the ending, it doesn't work. And who knows what. And then when you kind of get through it and there's no more question marks on the page, I'm in pretty good shape. But then, after that's just the structural part of it.
Yeah.
And then there's, I'll do a separate pass where I'll just completely focus on the dialogue. And then there's another pass where I'll focus on, the actual, grammar, because I tend to write in a pretty terse style for screenwriting. But, and so I'll do several different passes, just focusing on different aspects once I sort of, I'm pretty solid on the story,
Yeah. No.
And the book was the same. It was.
I admire that, because I have I can't self-edit at all. I can't be. I'm like, it'll just turn into like a pound of smoke.
Well, it's only a start, and that's the thing about a screenplay is this is just this is the first draft idea, and who knows what happens with these things. I mean, if they sell them, I'd love to be involved. Who knows? You can't predict that plan either. And I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of it. If somebody's going to really take it and do something really great with it, then it becomes theirs, and then if they keep you on, and I've had situations where just pencil it up, give it back, and I'll shape it to what you think you need to make your movie, to do your show. But so it evolves and changes because more creative people with stake come into it. and that process can be pretty good too. You know, it can lift it. You know, I mean, I think you know, you all know when it starts turning into something that you don't want to do anymore.
Yeah,
You know, I've
everybody
had that experience once. Yeah.
does it look the same in your mind when you get to
I don't know. It, you know, honestly, there's only been a couple things, at least in that drama thing, that were actually done. A lot of the stuff was whatever happened to them. I don't know. I wasn't ever told if they were ever produced or made. You know, I know I wrote several horror scripts for one guy for a while, and yeah, I don't know if he ever got them done. I don't know. They might change the titles, or they might even just went to a different writer. You know, like
so
a
you
different
gotta
stage
be
of development.
it's interesting because just being someone who doesn't put all of their brain power into creating this world, and then like you kind of got to be a little, you got to be okay to cut the cord a lot of
Yeah, totally. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm not so stuck on even the novel. I mean, if somebody, you know, yeah, I got a script, call it what it is. It's a first draft of something. But you know, how far do you take this? You wrote the novel, you're going to write the screenplay, what, you want to direct the movie, you may as well edit and do the marketing on your own too. Like you can't, you know, it doesn't even matter if you have the skills. There's just a point where you're just too in it, you know. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
no, I totally, yeah.
your objective eye is different, and you know, I mean, I might sit in the book and go, yeah, but the last chapter means so much. It's got to be the end of your movie. Well, it doesn't really work for me, Cam. You know, hate to tell it to you. You know, okay.
So the
You know, I mean, you could try and fight that fight, but unless it really, it's not that I you know, I acquiesce that easily. If I really think, you know, that you know, the plot's just getting churned around too much, that's one thing. But you know, who knows what governs some of these changes? I mean, the last thing that governs the changes are stories. Sometimes there are budget, there are locations, there are availabilities, there are who knows what.
yeah, no, and that's the thing that a lot that's behind the big budget movie is that there was all of these things that had to line up perfectly to get to where we are here. So all these changes that you're speaking of, yeah,
Yeah.
like it can be a speed bump and totally taken in a different direction that, you know, you may not have had in mind.
Yeah, but you know, of all the scripts I wrote for people, I mean, maybe there's five or six, and yeah, I think okay, maybe a few more, but you know, 1, 2 got made, and one was a pretty unforgettable thing because you know, you're just not attached to it when
Yeah.
they get to that point, right? I mean, at all. And then this one in Vancouver last year, I mean, yeah, I wasn't even told it was in production. I found out after the fact. So but that's fine. I mean, that's not the contract, right? The contract is, you know, give us the story, and here's your money, and you know, nice.
I mean,
And but the rest of them, I think they were just, you know, these producers got money for spec. They got, you know, money for development on ideas. They wrote the idea. Whether it got turned into something else or got made, I don't know. But I know I got paid for the draft that I wrote. And you know, so my agent went through it, and we felt pretty good. And there you go, say la vie.
what do you? I want to switch gears here for a second, and we'll come back to. I want to get your take on stuff because you are so devoted to the thing you make, and you love characters. Like, what characters right now in your wheelhouse, in what you're watching and what's going on in media, what kind of characters are drawing you in these days that are being churned out that entertain you? If you like the thriller and the horror, it sounds, but like, where do you what's your taste, man?
Wow, I'm not even sure I know how to answer
I know it's yeah, you know, you take a second, I need water, and we can always edit, so I'll come right back.
that. okay, I think I got an answer.
All right, what's your answer?
In some ways, I think because I'm thinking like stuff I've written and stuff I've done, stories I've created, and I really like the reluctant hero, kind of thing. I'm really not too keen on writing I love James Bond, but that's a different thing.
Yeah,
He's there's an aspect to that that's sort of part of the character, but to write something where it's someone so perfect and keen and does it so easily, I'd rather deal with a person that's sort of a real person,
trouble,
and they're faced with this extreme situation that forces this aspect of them out, and that kind of stuff really does appeal to me, actually. And I got several. I got a movie I wrote that I like it so much. It's a great monster thriller horror flick. It's never going to get made. It's never going to see light of day anywhere. and it's Yeti, and same again. My agent was like, "You're writing a script on what?" Because you always thought, well, I always see bad Yeti movies, man. Guys in white gorilla suits and stuff. Why don't we do something real? Put a snowboarder on Everest and they encounter a real animal and it's not a myth. And that's where think of the money. If you suddenly found this myth to be real, think of the money that would be involved, and it created a great thriller. And and a real animal and a real threat. And it was just fun. It was just so much fun. It's just so much fun. And same thing. The guy's a reluctant, he's a washed out snowboarder trying to reclaim his Olympic gold that he lost to drug overdosing. And
not inspired by, I get it.
yeah, that typical guy, right? But his this team gets attacked, and and you can't see anything in a snowstorm. I was thinking, well, you can't see a shark underwater, so what if you can't see the animal in the snowstorm? Ooh, now we're getting good. Yeah. So now you're hiding things. Now you can't see it, so you're afraid of something you can't see, and so it was fun. But like I said, it's been, the tire got kicked a couple times, but yeah, it just didn't go anywhere.
Are there this reboot, reuse, recycle bullshit that is happening more and more with things that should be left well enough alone?
Yes.
As a writer, as somebody who's a creative, who's coming up with original content, I mean, everything takes from everything, right? Comedy, the arts, there's a little bit of, it's homaging, right? It's, I see you and this is you and I appreciate it, so I'm going to use it and run with it. Quentin Tarantino does it all day long, right?
Yeah.
But I guess the question is coming from a perspective where you're like, here, take this and run with it. This monster movie, Yeti, like these are original ideas, and there are pockets of the world that like these stories. There are channels out there. There are streaming networks now that
totally
have a home for these crazy out there ideas. So like, isn't that like a kind of a kick to the dick, so to speak? Like you're sitting here and you're like, hey, but yet you go and you want to redo Beetlejuice, right? You're just like, why? Like, why?
Yeah. Because it's guaranteed, I guess, because it's a proven IP. That's a big conversation. I had it's okay. I'll give you an example of this, which is exactly what you're talking about. I hadn't, I walked into a thing in LA. They had read this drumming script and they really seemed to like it. They had some changes they wanted me to consider, and it seems fine. And I walk into the room. There's 3 people in there, And after they've read it, and this is like they've even read it, and then we're talking, and but they say, but what? Isn't it kind of like Whiplash? Oh. And I'm like, okay, number one, don't even get me started on how Whiplash got panned in the drumming world, but
no,
no,
hang on.
Isn't that a good thing? And
yeah.
I actually I said, but isn't that a good thing? I mean, they proved that this concept is true, that it's a very visual music form. It's a very visual instrument. And so clearly it's been proven that this is the way to go. I mean, how many frickin' baseball movies do you want to make? And like, and you're comparing it to one,
Yeah.
one, and it won an Academy Award. Movie was beautiful. Like, it was beautifully photographed. It was beautifully acted, but just the drumming aspect of it just really didn't connect for me. Just didn't connect as true at all.
The way that's pretty much abuse by any rule of law anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
I can understand the commitment to wanting to be perfect. That's human, right? And I can understand splinters and busted hands and trying to impress somebody. That's human.
Yep.
But it's not human when your sensei beats you senseless for no reason. Like, unless there's no lesson against it, then it's abuse.
Yeah.
And that seemed a little. I mean, as much as he's unbelievable in that role, but that role I don't feel would reflect well in the drumming community, because teacher-student relationship isn't remotely close.
No, and it went further than that. He's great actor, great director. Like, the stuff he's done, like, is amazing. But the guy wasn't a drummer, and it showed up. Like, you could just tell in the physiology of, it's the way the stick sits in the hand, it's the way the foot slides on the drum plate, the bass pedal plate. There's a way your body form and shape takes, and all those things just were not there, and it just didn't look believable in the performance, and that really hurt it for me. And there was a lot of drummers that I know that were very much feeling that way. But so for me, this drumming movie, it's like, I want an actor who's a drummer. Go get him.
Yeah.
I want him to be a drummer. It has to be a drummer. Otherwise, there's just no point. It's just, it's not going to play true at all.
Any other inaccuracies and anything else that you see on screen when it comes to a skill like drumming, where you sit there? Because that's always interesting to me, is that, like, whenever someone's doing hair in a movie and Shauna sees it, and I just look over and I'm like, okay, so, and she's like, and I'm like, holy shit, right? So, like, does that show up anywhere else for you?
Nothing that jumps out in my mind.
Anything that's really good?
With drumming, or we mean just with?
Yeah, no, drumming. Like, have you ever seen a performance pulled off?
Yeah, then there was the real old movie. I can't remember the actor's name, and he died suddenly. He was killed in LA. But he was a real heartthrob. But he was really, it just played convincing. It was the Gene Krupa story. And geez, who was his name? I can't remember his name. But there was something that was very true there, in what was done. And it could even just be the way it was all staged and handled. Because just like anything else, you break it down like a choreographed dance. You could find a way to, cut it together later if you had to. But
who do you love playing right now? Like, what? Who
oh man. I'm a big Vinny Colaiuta fan still, and he's everywhere. You can barely turn the TV on without hearing the track he's done.
So is he just a working musician, and people are using him in band after band after band for recording?
Yeah, he's been with Sting, he's been with Frank Zappa, he's been, Joni Mitchell. It's endless. It's a big long list. Jeff Beck. It's just, but he's just a great player. Chad Wackerman's a really favorite one. There's drummers in this town that I love going to see play. Chris Sutherland, he lives in Toronto now. He's playing with Street Heart back now again. Mitch Dorch is a good friend, but he's always been one of my favorite drummers too. A friend of mine, Ty Rogers, he's always playing. Like, there's just a lot of drummers, even locally on that level. But when I started doing the work for Modern Drummer, it was really interesting. We started doing this video series here, and And it just started out because I think they were trying to figure out how to work more video into their magazine online profile, right?
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was like Tico Torres, Bon Jovi, Abe Laboriel Jr. with Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mark Schulman, who was here with Pink and then came back a few months later with Cher. And
Okay, so when that's so interesting because everybody's like Cher, Pink, and you're like the drummer. Like that's where you're like that's your interest. I think that's really fucking cool because
yeah,
nobody's ever paying attention to that part of the show.
no. And we got to do something really cool. I mean, I've actually seen the format replicated in the drum community. After we did it, we also did a bit with their drum techs, and that
Wow, that's cool.
totally. Do you want to hear the 5-second story how that came about?
No, do it, man.
Okay, because you might get sued.
And we're not that big of a deal.
Okay. We were supposed to meet with Tico Torres. He was here in Winnipeg at the arena playing Bon Jovi, but it was the day before that the fallout happened between Richie Sambora and the band.
Okay.
So the whole plan went to hell. And I ended up
that's a big story that's happening in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a big deal. Tico Torres had changed from Pearl to DW drums after playing nothing but Pearl his entire career. So that's why the magazine wanted it. So I had to get him in sound check, and he called me several times. We worked it out. He would do the sound check with me, and I could film that and do all that. And so it all was gone because they were not even here. They didn't even get in here till like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and that day. And so his drum tech, okay, this is very fun. And so his drum tech is he's more than willing to talk the drum kit down, you know. And he came from Aerosmith, and he's this big long history, and he, you know, talked us through the drum kit and covered all of that. And then so I cut it together, and I still was hoping to shoot the sound check when they were doing sound check, but then they had their guitar player who they brought in from Toronto, and that was essentially their rehearsal. So they said, we can't let you do this right now. So I thought, okay, but they had the isolated cameras all over the place, right, that play on the big screen.
Sure, yeah.
And I know that they have a video village back there, and they record it all. Like they record each camera. And what I didn't know is they do a full house mix as well. And so anyway, I said, can I just get, you know, the ISO cameras on him? And yeah, and John Bon Jovi said, I'll give you more than that. I'll give you, you know, 2 songs, complete front of house. So modern drummer, nuts. And and when I cut it together, here was this bit also that tied in the drum tech. So the next job was Abe Laboriel Jr. with Paul McCartney at the stadium.
Jesus.
And I had 2 young guys that, you know, they came and filmed it with me. That was Brad Crawford and BJ Verreau. and yeah, and I have a soft spot for those 2 guys. But so they, you know, they came and they filmed it with me, and we did it. And we're sitting there, and we had a cameraman who used to live here, Steve Morrison, came and did it too. And anyway, we're setting up, and this guy, my partner Sue, is talking to this guy, really thick British accent, and here it's Paul McCartney's personal assistant, this guy Nigel or something. And they're talking, and he comes over, he says, by the way, Cam, Paul is ready for you on the stage. And I felt sweat going down my armpit. What? And I think there's a bit of shock. I think for a second we thought, is that really going to happen? And I can't speak for Brad and BJ who were there that day, but I think there was a bit of moment of, did he just say Paul? Anyway, by the time we got out there, here it was Abe's drum tech, who was named Paul Davies.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. But then, you know, here comes Abe Laboriel, and he's like huge. He's this massive drum figure in the drum world. And he came and he's in Winnipeg, you know. I said, you know, I wasn't even supposed to meet with him till like later afternoon. And here we are midday, and he wanted to come out and watch his drum tech do his bit. And he hung out the whole day. And that's the vibe that got caught. And after that, it was all the drummers, all those guys, they all want, you know, I mean, the drum techs knew what was coming by the time we got there to set up and do it. And that's the thing that caught on with Modern Drummer. And yeah, it was awesome. It was really great.
I mean, the publication for drumming, I would say.
The Bible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go so far as to say it's still the Bible magazine for drumming in the world. Yeah.
And is that like, I imagine switching brand names for a magazine, that's a big scoop, right? Like that's something that in the drum world, because
Well, for him, yeah, changing a drum kit was a big deal. Yeah.
right? Like, like pads on a goalie, that's brand advertising, right? Who's watching? Like the bass drum has the name right on it, so it's
Yeah. And it was so much fun just sitting down and talking to those guys, and found out I'm actually pretty good at kind of getting rid of the the fanboy moment doesn't sit there very long for me, and you can just start talking to the person, because when they sit down with you, you really are just your own person to person now. So I'd even ask them, because they get hammered with stuff. Is there anything you really want to talk about? Like just to start up, I can start in with questions, but and they always, no one ever asked me about this. Okay, let's do that. And so it ended up being just a really great conversation. And a lot of times it was, they'd give you the sound mixes.
wow.
Yeah, they give you the mixes. They take care of that. The video guys, same thing with Cartney's show. They gave me the ISO cameras for that too. So that's a big deal. And I'll tell you a really great story. What happened?
Yeah.
My father-in-law is from Britain, and he played bass years ago, but he was, he lived there in that same area, and he was at the Cavern when Ringo Starr first got on the Beatles.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so anyway, I guess Sue had told Nigel this story, and he had some tickets for us to give for us guys. I mean, I didn't expect that, because these things were, it was pretty much sold out, and he's, and they were up in the top. Anyway, he comes back, and he said, I had different tickets, but now I'm going to give you these. But he gave me two more, and he says, I'll give you these. Yeah, and they were for everybody. Like, BJ, Brad, we all went to the show later, and which was so great. But he gave me the ticket. He says, I'll give you these. These are 11th row center, but you got to go and get her parents. Yeah. So I can't even tell you how jazzed that was quite a night. That was really something.
That's magical, man.
That was so cool. That didn't need to happen. That certainly wasn't expected at all.
No, and it's I think you've just nailed it for everybody, because when you really think about it, yeah, you're fanning. And I mean, I'm a nerd, right? I did this thing with Kevin Smith, and like that's my guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Speaks my language. So I have said, and will always say since day one, like I was keeping my cool on purpose. Like I was front and center direct on it, because I was like, I'm not like, it's almost like if you really know a thing about somebody, find out something you don't. And like you said, ask a question, right? So like you could sit there and ask whatever. And I was a hired person. I was paid. Skip the Dishes paid me to do it. The whole story is fucking hilarious, because I said to a guy who I know, who we both know, I said to Aaron Dole, Steve's friend Aaron.
Yeah. Right, because he's okay. Yeah.
If nobody at Skip can do this, you just know that I would do it. I could clamp down. I could be professional. I could be an adult.
Yep.
And it would just be fun, because it would test my mettle, right? See if I act stupid or not, because who fucking knows anymore. And it went off well. Like we did it in his house in a pandemic, talking to Kevin Smith on Skip the Dishes like Instagram feed for an hour straight. Like it was so
no way.
And,
yeah, I know.
They let me ask some of my fanboy questions. They were super good about that. But like the hilarity of it is like, and I wish I was watching this, but like in the live feed, I was up first because he was a couple minutes late, and someone's like,
"Yep,
is this Kevin Smith if you bought him on Wish.com?" And then the guys took a screenshot of that. I have it. I'm like, yeah, I'm Kevin Smith if you bought me on Wish.com. So, but like, I think that's really neat. Like, I never thought about it like that. Like, just ask them a thing. Be like, so what do you think about this? And it's completely irrelevant.
Oh, yeah.
It's person to person, like you say. And then you can have that conversation that you want.
Well, you get down to the person pretty quick, and that gets them talking about the thing that they're asked to talk about all the time, even though they still love it. But I mean, it's sometimes it's always regurgitated stuff, especially for people on that level, right?
Yeah.
But but yeah, and then it was pretty amazing, some of the stories that would come out, because they actually did kind of work their way in to really kind of getting more personal about what they were talking about.
No, that's
I
magic.
I love doing it. We did about 6 or 7 of them, and it got me to Vegas, working for Modern Drummer at a big festival down there, and really hanging out with some guys. Yeah, it was fun.
Is
It's
that
great.
is that
And
Mecca?
they're
for
still
drummers?
friends.
Like this,
What's that?
this like the Mecca for drummers? This conference?
They were trying to do. They did a festival down in Vegas, and there was a lot of yeah, a lot of heavy guys in that room.
I want
But
I want to pivot back to your real talent, so your writing and stuff.
yes,
What drives you nuts today about what's going on with just recycled gobbledygook? I kind of wanted to get back to that and get your opinion on it, because it seems that TV's the new thing to throw money at, right? And if you can stream it and you can subscribe to it, like HBO and the big ones, like I'll never turn down an HBO series because they put so much into it. But is there, I guess what I'm saying is it hard to stomach a lot of the crap that's coming out now, or is it
I don't think I have that hard of a reaction to it.
no?
You know, I still love it when I dial in. There's been a couple movies I saw recently.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking in a
No
nice.
Sudden Move, I thought
Okay.
was great. Did I get the title right? Is it No Sudden Moves? No Sudden, with Don Cheadle and Steven Soderbergh did it.
Oh, on Crave. Okay, yeah, Benicio del Toro
Yeah,
on Shield. That's
yeah,
yeah, okay.
it is great, and even everything about it, man. It was just so well written, so well done. I mean, you're just solidly in, right? I had even just the other night, the Woman in the Window
Oh,
with Amy Adams,
yes.
and it's sort of an homage to Hitchcock's Rear Window, right?
Interesting. I saw it briefly. I
Yeah,
didn't catch too much about it.
but it's so well, man. I highly recommend it. Ooh, yeah. It actually made me start at some point, like, and that does not happen often, right? That does not happen often anymore. But it's just so well done. I mean, it was, and you could tell it's just they had a hell of a script to work with, clearly, right? And then you get someone who really knows what they're doing with that genre. That they know how to create the shadows. They know how to, everything about what they're doing cinematically is enforcing this tone, is enforcing this, this story. And sometimes that's the thing that I notice the most, is when the lighting is just too even, too lit, and yet you're trying to create a thriller, you're trying to create a edginess or a tension. Those kind of things I think I notice more than you know I'm just not that much of a critic.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm that much more of a critic, because I kind of take the show for what it is, and I either like it or I really don't. Or,
Yeah, I guess I see it like there's just, and maybe it's the pandemic. Maybe that's where I'm approaching this from, because there's just so much of it, right? Like, and because there's so much, it waters, like it
yeah,
muddies the waters, and you can't find the good stories and the interesting characters as easily, I guess, as 10 years ago. And maybe I'm on the verge of becoming one of those senile people who just complains about yesteryear.
yeah, and I am by no way, by any means, here an expert at what the in engaging what the appetite is.
Yeah.
For some of the people that I had these, call them pitch meetings, and what it is. But I know a lot of times the conversation always started with, is there a proven IP? So, if I had, for instance, these two projects, the Sod Man and Swing King,
Yeah.
you came back to, is there a proven IP, or do you have an IP? Is it a book? Is there something? So they're always trying to attach this IP. And I guess in a sense, because most IPs now, like the book,
Yep.
you can get them out there and you can prove the validity, to the IP, even though it's really not a true representation of whether it's any good or not. You just, I've been listening into a lot of things, trying to get educated on how to do this, and a lot of these authors are talking about doing 3-4 books a year, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm sorry, there's no way that I have our time believing you could write that much and it's going to be really that good. But the point is that it's become a very savvy marketing thing more than it's become this
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
writing thing. Yeah, and that's where it's going. And so it doesn't mean the IP's proven, doesn't necessarily mean that there's a solid story here with some great characters, and you could really find something really good in it. But the thinking is that the IP is proven, it gives them the advantage to sell this or whatever, because that's why they keep going back to these older shows and trying to regurgitate them.
Okay, so thank you, because I'm just wondering. I'm not in my, small vacuum, right? I'm not hearing people screaming for bring back everything in the '90s that is part of one of the greatest eras of filmmaking and start, 4King it. I don't like. There's a reason that grit is on it and that style is there, just
Yeah.
as the style of the silent film era and the '50s. Like when you
Yeah.
4K Citizen Kane, you lose why Citizen Kane is fun to watch.
Phew. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like,
No
Mr.
kidding.
Criterion was doing it the other day, and I'm like, this is not. And I'm not saying I won't watch it, right? I'm just saying.
So you're saying someone redid Citizen Kane?
No, their Criterion is going to be doing their first 4K release for an old film, and it's going to be Citizen Kane. They're going to bring it in.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to recut it and make it perfect. And you, as a person who's played drums, like the one thing from movies, which is all of my knowledge.
Yeah, some imperfections are good things.
Yes, like you've seen Sound City. You know
Yeah.
why tape worked more than digital, because tape meant you had a set of balls and you wouldn't screw up because you knew how to play. And if there was imperfections, it sounded great. I don't want Rosebud to be perfect. I want it to be grainy and part of an era, and be reminded of that cinematic era. And I'm the critic. You're the
No, I agree with you. There's something, especially something like Citizen Kane. I mean, what Greg Toland did. There's a few movies that I really noticed cinematography on that really got me hooked. And it was when I was younger. And the first movie that really rifled me really hard, after Star Wars, right? But Star Wars was great. But when I went into theater to watch Alien, man, that just changed everything about how I saw a movie look. I'd never seen anything look like that ever. And I actually remember it. I also going with my hockey team. There's a bunch of us, and we went to meet these girls or something. Big horror movie. No, we were all screaming like girls, and that thing came out of the chest, and everyone was throwing up in the theater. People were throwing up in the theater.
Really, you were one of those?
Yeah, and it really happened. But I mean, it was just the visual was just crazy, and I just remember being like really noticing that after that. And then when I got into wanting to direct and do things like that, I really became attracted more and more to cinematographers almost than directors. And and what Greg Toland did in Citizen Kane for the time period is ridiculous. I mean, it's just unbelievable. To this day, it's still unbelievable. And I was even watching it not too long ago, and my son was here, and he's even like, now he's starting to get a sense of, this. And he's like, how do they get the focus like that? I said, yeah, right. And I said, well, that's full focus. They built their own lenses for it. What? Yeah. So like that kind of stuff, or the story of King Kong and how it got made. I mean, I am a monster movie guy.
Yeah.
And I love King Kong. And yeah, but more than that, it's the story behind how they pulled it off, how Willis O'Brien made it work with this 18-inch thing, and how he built a fan to keep the film from melting because he had to do stop motion, and just the innovation that went behind. Never mind getting the images, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, yeah.
Just leave it alone. So it's
A
so,
little bit, like God help us. Hopefully, no one tries to redo Jaws. That would be bad.
yeah, Stevens from his old debt grip.
Yeah.
But it's cool because coming from your perspective, who's making things. If that was me, I would be like, fucking put some spotlight over here, people. Like stop. But yeah, now knowing where the gamble comes from with the proven IP, and going back to the well, how many times can we do Batman? How many times can we do Superman? Right? Like it.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I don't know how many times I thought Christopher Nolan's Batman was pretty darn good.
Yeah, I don't.
I thought,
although
he took the cartoon aspect out of it completely, which is great.
That's the Joker performance will go down as the. I mean, I'm sorry, Jack. Heath wore it better.
Oh yeah. Well, a different script, a different thing was required. If you look at it that way, I mean, he walked in with a script, and he walked in with a director, and he walked in with, how they wanted it done and how it was supposed to look and be perceived. And Heath Ledger walked in with a completely different director and different script and different tone to perform to perform for. So
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought so. I thought, his movies get pretty complicated for me though. I thought I'm a pretty smart guy, but sometimes it's like, oh, wow.
Everything is Tenet on this show. We always somehow manage to work it into.
I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen Tenet yet? Okay.
I should see it.
Yeah, lots of coffee. Toothpicks under your eyes to not blink, because if you blink, you will indefinitely miss something.
Okay.
It's a mind bend. Like it literally. Like when I think about how to try to understand it, I feel the effects of a migraine coming on.
Okay.
So just multiple watches, and then one day you'll be like, "Eureka! I get it."
Yeah, because I like stuff like Memento is genius.
Oh, and then when they re-released it on DVD, they're like, "Here's the actual way it was filmed, and here's the way we made it," and then you get to see it, and you're like, "Yeah, this would have been horrible if it had been done in chronological order."
Yeah.
What is some of your
genius?
Favorite, who would you want to write for? If I could.
Oh, Ridley Scott.
Who?
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott?
Yeah.
So okay, yeah.
And I will shamelessly admit right now, I would love to write a Bond movie.
No, there's nothing wrong. The whole Bond anchor to Winnipeg, right? How the guy,
William Stevenson and the whole man, the intrepid man. And
why am I asking you, the guy who made the intelligence novel?
Yeah, because he worked with Ian Fleming.
Yeah, like that. I'm forever Bond. I grew up on the couch Friday nights. Me and my mom would make a thing of popcorn and watch Thunderball and Octopussy and like just everything you can think of over and over and over again. Mostly Sean, some Roger. Dalton never made it into the cut.
No, he didn't have great scripts, but he was such a good actor though.
Yeah, he's great in this is his new series I was watching him on Crave. It's got Brendan Fraser in it. It's a DC comic series. He's made a comeback as a smart professor who can travel through time, and he's just great. And I'm like, man, if they just didn't give you Bond now, you might actually be able to pull it off.
Oh yeah, no, he's a great actor, but the scripts weren't there, and John Glenn was the director, right? But
those are the Bonds that we kind of stay away from, I guess, as being true Bond fans.
Yeah, but
why Ridley Scott? Is it because of the fact that the guy
Alien?
Okay, all right.
I think I was pretty much stuck on. That's the first time I actually knew. I mean, I couldn't have told you who Steven Spielberg was when I first saw Jaws. I was young. George Lucas, I guess. I don't know. I just noticed it. It just stuck out at me. Visual guy. I just like his visual sensibility to a movie. Same as David Fincher. Same as, at the end of the day, these really great directors that are so visual and cinematic, they hire great cameramen, and they have a sense of what they want, an aesthetic clearly, but they're really good storytellers. At the end of the day, they're just good storytellers. They have a good sense of how to keep a certain tone and tension into a performance and into the frame, so that they don't let the audience go before they have to. That they're very conscious of things like that, and you notice it because when you see movies that aren't done well, it's because that's usually the reason, right?
No, I've been watching. What was I watching with Shauna the other night where we were just, oh no, that's trope, and I just fell out. And
Oh yeah.
and once you're out, like the work to go back in, it feels like I don't owe you that. Like you had me, and this is at the same time. I mean, I'll always give something a chance. I rarely walk away from anything because I'm like, this could turn around. There could be a reason for all of this, and it'll all come. It's like the Winnipeg Jets. They fix it all in the third act, right? So
Yeah.
like but at the same time, like if I fall out and start calling things or noticing things, then I guess that's the difference between 77 take David Fincher, which I think is fine. If you're looking for a shot and you want all of the colors, that's fine. I mean, if you're Gary Oldman and you're a little old, that might be the worst. But like,
So I saw a really great interview with him. He finally actually addressed that.
what did he
I know it's a big thing because he, all these takes he does and all these takes he does. It's not that he does that all the time or for every take or anything, but his idea is, and I thought it was pretty neat, but who has the money or the luxury to do that? But his take on it was he's trying to give the actor, the point to where it becomes so comfortable and so natural that that when they get to that point, that's where the real thing's going to happen. And he picks the moments and the scenes to spend that time on. Was sort of how he broke it down. But the other thing about it was, he says, but let's be clear here, these actors are getting millions of dollars. Why am I in a rush to get them off the set? And I thought, when I heard that, I just went, that's why that dude's got his job.
I am using every penny that's being spent right now.
Yeah, they're being paid millions of dollars. Why am I in a rush to get them? I thought that was brilliant. I thought, okay, so that, but at the same time, I mean, his movies are built on great performances, right? But there's so many directors that, Denis Villeneuve just blows my mind. He's fantastic. And there's, look at even some of the directors we have locally who are really starting to really get some real noticing and recognition. Like,
Garrity.
Sean, I love Sean. I actually laughed watching For Pros. We watched it. It was a great pandemic movie.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, so if you listen to this, we did like it. Sean, Lyndon, Hunter was really good.
Hunter was one of the sleeper movies that I tell everybody. I'm like, you want to watch something that'll throw your hair back? Try Hunter.
Yeah, and now I saw the like BJ's movie out, right? The Return, and
yes,
and like I said, I've seen those guys for a long time, and it's great to see them blossoming like that, like really doing something. And I know BJ's wanted to do that for a long time, but list goes on and on. And Norma Bailey is just out there. She's directing television all over the world. Like there's a lot of local directors. I think there's more taking root, and I'm not sure why, or maybe it's just, I don't know. Am I just noticing it more and they were always there? But I don't think that's the case.
No, it's just the gene pool is for talent is just deep, and it's just growing. There's a rumbling here in the industry in Manitoba that's like really awesome. Like,
isn't it amazing?
It's
like, look where this has come in 10, 15 years. It's just nuts.
I never thought I'd be referring to and seeing things on Deadline and Entertainment Tonight and and Looper and Screen Rant about places, about
Yeah.
movies and TV shows that are being filmed in my hometown on the sites that I'm reading is just fucking wicked interesting. Like that, how does that happen? And it only happens honestly, and it's because everybody said the same thing. It's because all you guys are so fucking talented that like, you know, you yeah, sure, tax credit. Let's like, you got to acknowledge it, but
Well, that gets the jobs here. That gets the people here. But
the
you know,
fact,
tax credit or not, unless the crews are there, the ability's there,
yes,
the local talent within, you know, the artisans is there. If none of that's there, the tax credit's going to mean shit.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, I got to wait a few years to get it. And, you know, so I mean, it comes down to, and the locations, this, you know, I mean, yeah, we don't have mountains, but, you know, there's so much diversity in Manitoba. I went up north in Lake Winnipeg, and it just blew my mind. I had never been up there. And Lake Winnipeg, you know, it's one thing to see it from Grand Beach or Gimli. It's a whole other thing, man, to see that North Basin and some of the shorelines. It's like going, wow, this is the fucking Scottish Highlands. Like, it's just unbelievable. And there's an island up there. It's like Gilligan's Island. It's called George's Island. And there's nobody there, man. Nobody there. And it's like there's just waiting for a horror crew to load up on the Nemeo ship and get its ass out there and make a scary damn movie. Like, it's just unbelievable. And the water's blue. And I'm just like, God, I was just so stunned. And I felt so naive. You know, that's the other side of it. I felt so naive. But yeah, I think, you know, it's pretty great. I mean, I've got one son working in the industry, and you know, and the opportunities he's getting at the level that he's getting them wouldn't no way been as attainable for him 10, 15 years ago.
yeah,
You know, just wouldn't have been. So I think it's amazing. You know, we got this trough of producers here, and I've worked with some of them. You know, some of them I only just sort of know as acquaintances, kind of thing. But you know, I mean, it's a viable industry anymore. It's not just a cottage wannabe thing in a big way.
yeah. I'm just so like it's great to be proxy too. It's great to do this thing here and have the access to everybody who's very happy to talk to us, and we're very happy that you guys say yes like that. It's just fun to do because it's your backyard, right? It's not off in the wild blue yonder that's unattainable, and you've got to travel across the world to this town called LA, and it only exists there. Like it's in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is sexy, like you said.
It is.
You know, and it plays
Yeah.
different things where you can put a ton of different shades of lipstick on us, and we all look like it looks different, right? You've got
That's right.
you got the prairies, you've got the 30s and the 40s in Chicago and New York. Like it's this weird dichotomy of things that ends up being, oh, we can Sean Penn can shoot a film in Winnipeg and it do incredibly well at Cannes. That can happen, right? And that's only because of the talent that's here that gets it that far.
Yeah.
You said like you could have gone Vancouver, you could have gone Toronto. What else makes you stay here working in the industry here? Like what's
well, now I just don't, honestly. I just, yeah, it's not that I'm old. I'm not saying I'm old, but you know, I'm just, yeah, I don't want to move now. Like, not to out of this province, I don't. But I'd love, you know, I love going, working different places for a time. That's always great.
Yeah, it just dispels the mystery of like, you got to go there to do it. No, you can be where you are. You just have to work at finding out how to make that happen. Like it's just.
Yeah. And I have granddaughters here now. And I'm like, you know, I have one daughter who lives in Toronto, and, you know, but our boys live here, and yeah, I just don't want to do that. But what would have maybe it would have, there's probably, as a writer, trying to do this from Winnipeg, maybe that wasn't my best choice. But you know, I was, as much as we're talking about, yeah, I've done this and I've written for this and written for that, I was always kind of doing it hand in hand with still making a living. You know, if not by writing, I was still in IT and still kept contracts, and then I was at some point it became the whole thing. Around 2011, I got laid off out of IT, and I didn't want to go back. At that point, it had to become really real,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then so I put Sogo together with a business partner originally, and coming up with that name was
Yeah. What is
I
that?
mean, it was I was okay. It was because I was old enough at that point to I should have got off my arse and just got deeper into this and pushed harder. I would have had some movie out by now that
Yeah.
but because I didn't, so it really became shit or get off. Shit or get off. Yeah, Sogo, that's neat.
Yeah, no, you win. You fucking branded that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, if I would have been in Toronto or Vancouver at the time of the maybe it absolutely would have been better for my kids. I don't know. And that was just more risk than I would even now that I'm ever willing to take, because it just wasn't my, if I didn't get it, if I couldn't do it for whatever reason. It's not like it's a 9-to-5 job with some stability in it. It does rely on your ability to get it done. And what if it doesn't work out? And I had other people that I was responsible for. So
no, and it's I think, I mean, I don't know. I only know, and I'm biased, but like this is a great place to just figure it out. Like if you want to get into it, I feel from everybody who we've had on the show, they say the exact same thing. It's like it's a great community of people. So if you're going to do it, you're actually going to do it in an environment that's more about it thriving and everybody doing well than the competitive nature of the bigger markets. And
yeah, I think eventually you might have to be in that market, not necessarily buy a house there.
No.
There's two choices there.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have more relationships in LA. With the ones that I've got in the last few years, but it'd be great to do that. And I since the pandemic, before, I think we spent January in LA for the last 4 years before the pandemic, so we really felt it through the pandemic, not being able to be there. But it by no means means that I want to buy a house there and uproot my life. That's a totally different choice. And in today's day and age, I don't think that's it. I mean, all you need to do is establish a relationship in those centers where there's high commerce for any art form or any media industry you're trying to do. From there, you can do them anywhere now. Like,
Yeah, with the age of technology, I'm glad you're here. I wouldn't have been able to talk to you otherwise.
Yeah, and look at the Zoom call. It looks great.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Yeah,
it's definitely dropped the borders of the distance between how people communicate with each other, and like it put us all on the same playing field.
Yeah,
on a half-second delay for 18 months.
It's really neat,
dude. You're more than welcome to come back anytime and talk more.
This was awesome. Thanks for letting me rant about drumming.
Dude, I'm glad I got to Steve told me all about the drums, and I was like, hey, I want to hear about the drum side too. So, but there's way more here that I want to get into with you, and I just want to talk film with you. So you're more than welcome to come back anytime and shoot the shit with me and Steve.
Fantastic, thanks.
We did an episode not too long ago that I'm figuring out how to still remove the sound from. We did a commentary to Bubba Hotep.
Okay.
That's an upcoming episode where me and Steve just sit here and criticize Bubba Hotep for the entire length of the movie.
And that's something Steve could totally do.
Yeah, no, he was fantastic. He was like, leave the camera on. And I'm like, no. And now I've watched it and I was like, good idea. Well, I'm glad we left the camera on.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Cameron Patterson for you right there. If people want to reach out to you and want to get in touch with you about the company, where do they find all that stuff?
Yeah, there's a website, IMDb Pro, I guess. I don't know. Send me an email. I'm not hard to find. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find it pretty easy. I do have a website for the novel, for the novel stuff I've got going on. And getting ready to, hopefully by the end of the year, get the second book out.
Sweet.
Yeah. It'd be great if I could write books
in my book right now.
Okay, in case you didn't know, it's called The Need to Know. In case
Yeah.
you're still not sure. Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm gonna put the link to your book in the show notes. So if somebody's like, I want a good Canadian spy novel, you now know where to find it. Just click.
You
on
want a good, where a prime minister's assassinated, where there's a helicopter crashes into Vancouver. It's all in there, man. It's all in there.
And you want a sexy hometown of Winnipeg to anybody in the South who's, our friends in the States. This is how you get to know Canada through Cameron Patterson.
There you go. There you go. I love that compliment, actually. Great.
We try. If you want to follow more of us, reeldebaters.ca, that's where you can subscribe. Show notes have all of the ways you can support the show. If you like what you heard and you're like, hey, we want to donate some money, throw a couple bucks at us at our donation tab. $1 or $2. It's not any more than that, and it's ridiculous. You can also buy our merch at our prop shop, which is sponsored. Well, not sponsored by. I wish it was sponsored by Threadless. It's on Threadless's website where you can find all of our snazzy stuff, hoodies, hats, t-shirts. If you want to contact the show for any reason whatsoever, thereeldebaters@gmail.com. It's been a pleasure, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, man.
Around for a second before I fully let you go. Watch all the movies, kids, and we're gone. Say bye, Cam.
Bye-bye.